Why a Good, Better, Best podcast? Well, I'm doing a podcast, or I should say I'm talking about good, better, best using podcasts as a distribution method, really because at the heart of it, I'm a coach, I'm a teacher, I'm an educator. And so I love to study, I love to innovate, but more importantly, I love to share what I've learned with others. And, I really appreciate all the books I've read, all the seminars, all the podcasts I've listened to, YouTube videos that I've watched, and have just grown and learned so much from all these platforms that they are, in fact, my mentors. And so I have a great appreciation for the podcast method. And so I think it's a great method for good, better, best to discuss and talk about best business practice and continuous improvement. What I really enjoy is I study great businesses and successful people so that I can learn from the best practices and really in all types of fields. For that matter, I would really love to read books about people who failed. Unfortunately, people who failed and then never come back, we don't read their books. We see people who failed and then triumph over their failures and become successes. But I would be very interested in reading and seeing about business practices and books where people just fell flat on their faces. I think there's a lot we can learn from that. Now, I've been a student of business and personal growth for really over 25 years now, and I've enjoyed every moment of learning. And recently podcasts are new. Podcasts are new to the platform. I come from a day and time where, we had cassette videos and, to watch, or cassette tapes to pop into our cars. And so now, some of my favorite methods are podcasts, and I have all kinds of different podcasts. I have 5-minute podcast shows that I love to listen to, 10-minute shows, depending on what I'm doing and, the kind of time I can commit. We drive, my college kids back and forth from Washington, California every year. And so, it's a 17-hour drive, and, I've got my 3-4 hour podcasts that I listen to. And so, my current podcasts right now are How I Built This. It's NPR produces it and really interviews and details how businesses are built. Absolutely love that show. I listen to Jocko. I listen to The Way I Heard It, Revisionist History, Common Sense, Side Hustle School, David Novak Leadership, Hardcore History, The Art of Manliness, and PragerU, just to name kind of my top ones. I'm also a voracious reader. I love reading. I'm a good reader. I've trained myself to be a good reader. And I always appreciate great authors, and especially great authors who can make simple the difficult, right? Take something that's very complex, very difficult, and make it simple. Look, I'm not trying to hurt myself here, right? I've been to college. I don't need to, go through the grind again. So I read for pleasure. I read for enjoyment. I read to learn. My desire then is to create clarity in topics that I discuss. And so what I try to do is direct people to the people who I learned from, people who I've gleaned from, people who've blessed and influenced my life. I usually synthesize in a lot of my topics. I synthesize my favorite books into good, better, best topics. Now, my goal is not to give a comprehensive book report. My goal is to just kind of draw out some of the personal elements that I use, that I have used, and then share those with others. Now, hopefully this might, excite you to want to go back to the author or the book and actually read the entire thing for yourself. And maybe you'll come up with some different conclusions or some different, just nuggets that you can grow from. And so, yeah, definitely I'm not trying to take every little ounce of juice from every book, just some key elements that I actually use. I've come to realize that the best way or I'm best as a student when I'm actually interested in the topic. So I only study things that I have a personal interest in. It's really been probably for the last 8 years one of the best changes that I've made in my life as far as a learner. It used to be that anybody who recommended a book or was excited about a book or passionate about a topic, I would go ahead and read it, and I found that I just didn't have the pleasure or the enjoyment in reading a lot of books. Now there were some that were phenomenal, but at this point in my life, if I'm not really interested in a topic, then I'm not going to read it. But if I am, I found that I have a higher level of listening, a higher level of intent and interest, and so so I listen to those kinds of things, and that's one of the ways I keep myself constantly learning and growing. To be honest, a lot of books, the whole book is in the introduction. And so I don't feel like I owe it to anybody to read the entire 250 pages. If I've gotten out of the book what I went to the book for, usually I'm done. I mean, I never pass on the introduction. I never pass on chapter 1. I never pass on the last chapter. Those are always really the best chapters if I don't read the entire book. But I do enjoy reading, and usually I do read the entire book, especially when I have interest in it. What I do is, I am constantly like asking the book questions, right? You see my books, there's always writing in them. There's always questions. There's always notes. I write down my thoughts, and then at the end of the book, immediately I start to synthesize that book into whatever's going on in my life. Maybe it's parenting. Maybe it's, running a business. Maybe it's as a salesperson. It just depends where I'm at in life. And I definitely have books that have notes that are directed towards specific businesses or leadership areas that I'm involved in. And then finally, my great desire then is to, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I aspire to communicate clearly, concisely, correctly, and with conviction. And so again, that's why I'm doing the Good, Better, Best podcast. That's why they're generally around 10 minutes. I don't want to spend too much time on a topic. Most of them have a book or have a person that you can follow up and really dive in deeper if you want to. This is just to kind of scrape off some of the nuggets and kind of get you excited about some certain topics. Again, why is the channel of podcasting good? Well, there's a lot of different types of learners, and some people are visual, some people like to read, but there's a lot of audio learners. And so just listening is a great way to learn, and podcasts definitely provide that vehicle. They're ideal, and this is when I listen to podcasts, they're ideal for when you're driving. Whether you're driving to work, and you got that half hour, you're driving in between appointments and you got 15 minutes, or maybe you're on a long drive. I also love podcasts when I'm working in the yard. I'm constantly, I've got an acre of yard and always something to do. And really exciting on Saturday when I, get to kind of queue up my podcasts and go work in the yard. It's one of my favorite things to do. I also enjoy the casual format of a podcast. You can, people interview in a casual way. There's flubs, there's mess ups, there's hiccups. And I actually like that. It makes them more human, more real. And so it's one of the methods that I enjoy communicating with, especially. There's different target audiences and diversification of topics. So I really enjoy that about podcasts. It can be flexible. I can be flexible in who I'm speaking to and what my topics are. Heck, I can be flexible as to like when I'm recording. I can wake up in the middle of the night. I can be by the river. When I go out of town and in hotel rooms, usually I love doing a lot of podcasting. And, really, I can save a lot of time as opposed to, let's say, YouTube, where there's actually a lot of production behind that. One of the other reasons why I chose podcasting is I'm always looking for a great way to like start my day, and so listening to a podcast is a great way to kind of get going, especially when you're going to that first appointment or you're heading to the office. Go ahead and listen to that podcast, or in between, as I mentioned before, Maybe you just need to make sure that your mind is right. Too many people are listening to politics and getting all worked up, or, sports. And it's like, you know what? Be sharp. Be sharp for that next meeting, that next appointment. And so good, better, best is a way and a method to stay sharp and be ready to go make that deal, make that sale, close it. The topic, good, better, best, for some of you who may not know, but the good, better, best title really comes from the poem Good, Better, Best. Never let it rest until your good is better and your better's best. I didn't invent that. That's from my 7th grade teacher, Mr. Tacker, and I've looked it up several times, and I don't know where he got it from, but definitely one of those things that I've drawn from somebody else. In my books, Do Better and Good Better, really what I'm doing is I'm synthesizing the good, better, best philosophy of continuous improvement. That's my goal. My goal is to help you to continuously improve. And so, as I mentioned before, I've had great influences with books, McDonald's Behind the Arches, It's Your Ship, Creativity Inc., the Pixar guys, Good to Great, Do Hard Things, Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers, The Google Story, Rich Dad Poor Dad. I mean, the list goes on and on. I've literally read hundreds of books. I consider, mentors of mine, Dale Carnegie and Napoleon Hill and Zig Ziglar, Pete Carroll, John Wood and Jocko, Les Schwab, and definitely my father. And so I hope you enjoy Good, Better, Best podcast. Feel free to, contact me and maybe, come up with some other topics that you might want to listen to. But ultimately, I hope that this inspires you to continue to pursue greatness, or maybe you're having a hard time and you know what, pick yourself up, dust off, do it again. Failure is an option, but you know what, we can come back and fight hard and have a always compete attitude. It doesn't matter who you are or where you are in life. A good, better, best philosophy never lets it rest until your good is better and your better's best.